Interesting post that Puff Puff 23 put up over at Democratic Underground, and I think that I should just refresh Hartmann Report. I think that Louise put this up over on. Yeah, she did. It's up at the top of HartmannReport.com as well, or a variation on it, and it's from a report out of CNN and Wikipedia, the history of Libya under Muammar Gaddafi. And it raises a really fascinating question. And I just, it's Anything Goes Friday, so feel free to call in on whatever topic tweaks your interest today. But I just had to, and I got a couple news things that I wanted to share with you, and some interesting stuff in the financial markets and whatnot. But that said, this was life in Libya under Muammar Gaddafi. Okay, and by the way, before Bush the Elder's first Gulf War, you'll recall Baghdad was referred to as the Paris of the Middle East. Sometimes people referred to, well, there actually were a couple of different cities that would be referred to that way, but Baghdad, was like, a major metropolitan. It was a really, good place to go. And the same thing with Libya. Here are some facts that you probably didn't know about Libya under Muammar Gaddafi. There were no electricity bills. Electricity was free for all citizens. There was no interest on loans. Now, this is in keeping with Islam. You'll find this in banks all across the Middle East. Banks in Libya are state-owned, and loans are given to all its citizens at 0% interest by law. If a Libyan is unable to find employment after graduating from high school or college, the state would pay the average salary of the profession as if he or she were employed until employment is found. Now, keep in mind, the way that Gaddafi funded all this was by selling oil. He nationalized his oil, something that when Mossadegh did back in Iran, we overthrew him with the Shah, something that when the guy who preceded Saddam Hussein, I'm forgetting his name, did in Iraq, we overthrew him to put in Saddam Hussein. In Libya, Gaddafi said the oil belongs to the country, and they took the money from the oil, and these are the things they did with them. If you were unable to find a job after you graduated, they paid your salary as if you had a job until you found one. If you wanted to be a farmer, something that they wanted to encourage, they would give you farmland, a house, equipment, seed, and livestock to kickstart your farm free. Gaddafi carried out the world's largest irrigation project, known as the Great Man-Made River Project, to make water readily available throughout that desert country. A home was considered a human right in Libya. In Gaddafi's Green Book, it says, the house is a basic need of both the individual and the family, and therefore it should not be owned by others. People didn't rent. Everybody owned. All newlyweds in Libya would receive $50,000 US to buy their first apartment so as to help start their family. When you get married, you get $50,000 cash to buy your first house or apartment. A portion of the Libyan oil sales is or was credited directly to the checking accounts of all Libyan citizens. Not like, once a year like in Alaska, where, when Sarah Palin was governor, I think her family took almost $40,000 out of the Alaska Permanent Fund because, everybody in the family got, $5,000 or something like that, $3,000. This is like every month. A mother who gives birth to a child gets US $5,000. We have something sort of like that with the tax deductibility of, child tax credit. When a Libyan buys a car, the government subsidizes half the price. Price of gasoline in Libya was 14 cents a liter. For 15 cents, a Libyan could purchase 40 loaves of bread. Education was free in Libya. High school, college, everything, totally free. Medicine was totally free in all of Libya. Libya boasted one of the finest healthcare systems in the Arab and African world. All people had access to doctors, hospitals, clinics, and medicines completely free of charge. If Libyans could not find the education or the medical facilities they needed in Libya, the government would fund them to go abroad, not only for free, but they got a $2,300 a month allowance or accommodation and car allowance. A quarter of all the people in Libya hold university degrees. Before Gaddafi, A quarter of Libyans didn't even know how to read or write. They were illiterate. Today, the literacy percentage is 87%, and a quarter of Libyans hold a college degree. And Libya had no external debts whatsoever. In fact, their internal reserves were over $150 billion, although we have frozen most of that, and our banksters are planning on stealing it. Now, all that said, Gaddafi was, if you upset him, he would throw you in jail, and there was basically no political freedom, but all the basic necessities were taken care of. And this is not unique to Libya, by the way. The variations of everything that I just shared with you are how it is in Saudi Arabia. If you're a Saudi citizen, you get $40,000 a year just like for being a Saudi citizen. Or at least that was the case a couple of years ago. We did a whole show on this with a fellow who was an expert on Saudi Arabia. I don't know if they've dialed it back a little now that the kingdom's having some problems with money, but I don't think so. So you had, and Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, the reason why you're not seeing uprisings in those countries is because they are oil-rich countries who have nationalized their oil, and they're using the money from that to keep their people happy. Which raises a really interesting question. Would you rather live in a country where all your basic needs were met? You never had to worry about going bankrupt if you got sick. You never had to worry about health care if you got sick. You could be educated as far as you went. You could become a medical doctor or a rocket scientist. You were guaranteed a job, and if you couldn't get a job, you were guaranteed an income anyway. You were guaranteed housing. Food was inexpensive. Transportation was widely available. But there was no political freedom. Or would you rather live in the kind of libertarian world that the Koch brothers are promoting so aggressively, where you are free to vote for anybody you want, sort of. You are free to buy your own health insurance from a for-profit health insurance company for $10,000, $20,000 a year, whatever it costs you, $5,000 a year, maybe if you're young and it's cheap. You are free to spend, to go $100,000 in debt to get a college education. U.S. average $28,000. You are free to, sleep in the streets. But you're also free to criticize the president within bounds. I mean, the butler to Mr. Trump is called for the death of both President Obama and Secretary Clinton on his Facebook page, and the Secret Service is looking into it. I mean, there are limits on our, and not unreasonable limits, frankly. But, it's an interesting question. And I think as more and more Americans feel politically impotent, they feel that, their votes don't really count. The political parties don't really represent them. And I think that this is one of the reasons you're seeing such a strong surge of support for both Bernie Sanders and for Donald Trump, because they're outsiders, right? They're not the established system. Then people are saying, well, okay, if I can't have political freedom, can I at least, not sleep in the streets? So anyway, I just, I wanted to toss that out. I thought it was a fascinating thing, and all around the world. I mean, this is the sales pitch that the Castro brothers have made. I'm talking about the Fidel Castro brothers. We do human rights. Hang on.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
We do human rights in Cuba just fine, thank you very much. Everybody has health care. You can't do that in the United States.
To watch more clips from our programs, hit the Watch More Videos button over here. And please be sure to hit the handy-dandy subscribe button so you'll always be up to date. Tag, you're it.